Ooh. That's probably some legal requirement. They have to let us all know.
Hi, everyone. I am Isabella Rodriguez. I'm the new outreach coordinator here at the Wenatchee Valley Chamber of Commerce. So today is our monthly What's for Lunch, and this is a monthly educational program for professional development. So I'm here today to introduce Cheri from Traction Advantage, and she will be our new board president next year.
That's right.
She's been a very important person on how we operate here at the chamber. And today she's going to be talking about leadership. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Cheri.
Well, good afternoon. I think officially as of 1 minute ago, everyone. And I know that you all are hiding out there, but please don't be afraid to show your face if you're not in the middle of eating, or even if you are, we could pretend we're actually sitting here having lunch together. So this is really actually a workshop that we do about 6 months into most of my client sessions, but I've modified it a little bit to make sure that it can work for everyone, not just businesses that are running on EOS, and we can talk more about that later. But this should hopefully, these handful of tools and practices that you should all be able to use to help you be both better leaders and better managers. If you've got your printouts or the documents that the chamber sent to you, hopefully you've got those printed. If not, I think that Rosa or Isabella dropped those in the chat for you. You should be able to snag those. If for some reason you didn't get those done, it'll help you as you take notes as we go through this. I also dropped a link in there for a blog, and I'll address that when we get to that in this point of the workshop today. I'm going to share my screen briefly just to kind of kick us off, and then I'm going to unshare it because I want to be able to see and not have us all look really super tiny. So let me throw this up here. So we call this the Lma Workshop because we believe that really this is sort of an equation, that really great leadership plus really great management equals, or there's a byproduct there that drives accountability in your organization. When we talk about leadership and management, they're two very different things, and you really need to have both. You need to be good at both of them most of the time to be what we like to call a great boss in your organization, in your business. So leadership is really all about working on the business. It's about providing clear direction and creating the opening. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And it's about thinking. It's that time thinking and working on the business. Management, on the other hand, is really more working in the business. It's setting those really crystal clear expectations and then communicating them well. I like to say there's no such thing as over communication, right? Both in your business and probably at home, I have found, raising daughters. Yeah, there's no such thing as over communicating to them. And then it's about doing, it's about executing. So today we're going to cover really the 5 leadership practices and the 5 management practices that if you can do these 5 things consistently in your business, the byproduct that is that you're just going to have this great accountability. It will help to make you a better leader and a better boss in your organization. I'm going to unshare this because I feel so tiny right now. So a couple of things first. Number one, it really isn't that complicated. And we tend to overcomplicate a lot of things. It really does come down to just a handful of things. There's just a million books out there on leadership and management. I know I've read most of them. We tried to boil this down to just these handful of practices. And if you can just do these total of 10 things, right? 5 leadership, 5 management things consistently, you're going to be great at this. Another important factor is you don't have to change your style. You don't have to be a different person really than who you are. You can be, kind of a tough boss or a nice boss. You can be an introvert or an extrovert. You can be really charismatic or a little more subdued. None of that really matters. What does really matter, 2 things. One, you genuinely have to care about your people. You really have to understand that you are there to serve them as their leader. And people can tell when you can't, right? Just doing these things is going to help you to be better. But if you really want to be great at this, you have to care about the people that you're leading in your organization. And number 2 is you actually have to want to be better. It takes a little bit of work, discipline, practice to be better at some of these things. If you're willing to lean in, sometimes get a little bit uncomfortable and get better, you will find that you are a much better leader and a much better manager. Please don't hesitate also to ask questions. I think people can just probably unmute or pop up a hand, however that works. I don't want you to be sitting there if something isn't clear. Please don't hesitate to reach out. So we're going to be starting on the leadership page. So if you've got those printed, I can't see you all. So pull those out, take a look at that. And I'm just going to walk you through the 5 leadership practices. If you want to really take it up a notch, what I want you to do before we start is I want you to think about all the people in your organization who report directly to you, what we call your direct reports. Think about who they are, visualize them. And I want you to figure out how many. Do you have 3? Do you have 1? Do you have 10? Take that number and I want you to write it down on the top corner of this paper, because as we're talking about these practices, the people I want you to be thinking about when you're answering these questions for yourself are those people, the people that report directly to you in your organization. Okay, so let's take a look at that first one. The first leadership practice, I'm giving clear direction. So that first bullet under there talks about that you are creating the opening. So as your business grows, right, as we get bigger and bigger and we have to start adding seats inside of our business, that's what we mean by creating the opening. We're figuring out what does this seat look like inside this organization so somebody can come in and fill that up. Am I the right person to do these great things? You've kind of defined what that looks like. The second part of that compelling vision, right? These two really go hand in hand. So if you've created a really compelling vision in your organization so that everybody is on the same page about where you're headed, like what's our long-term plan? What are some of our shorter-term goals? What are our core values? What's our sweet spot? Where do we like to operate in? If you've done a really great job of communicating those things to the rest of your team so that people can get on board and go, hey, that's what I want to do. You know, Kennedy did that when he set us out to set a man on the moon. That was kind of creating that compelling vision. And at the same time, it created an opening for NASA to step in, right, lean up into that and execute and make those things happen. How you make sure that everyone is on board with your compelling vision in your organization is you make sure that you share that with them pretty regularly. I'm amazed at how many business owners and how many business leaders have these great ideas for their organization, but they fail to communicate that well with the rest of everybody else that's in the business, so they don't know where this business is headed or if this is something that they want to be a part of. So those two things really go hand in hand. You've got to create that clear vision, make sure everybody knows, hey, this is what this business is about. This is what's important to us. This is what we're really good at doing. Here's where we're headed in 3 years, 1 year, over the next month, the next 90 days. Get everybody on board. And then as your business grows, because hopefully you're all here because you're looking to do that, right? We want to grow our businesses. We're creating those new seats. We need to hire people that we're really focused on crystallizing what that looks like so that people can kind of come in and fill that vacuum that you're creating in the business. So when you think about that, am I giving really clear direction? Am I providing a compelling vision and really articulating what that opening looks like for the people that report directly to me? We're not going to share, nobody's going to see. I just want you to put a little check the yes or check the no. And I only want you to check yes if you can say yes for all of the people that report to you, right? It's either all yes or it's a no. There's no wiggle room there. Okay. Let's take a look at the second one. I am providing the necessary tools. So if you've created this compelling vision, right, or you started that, you've got these openings and you're allowing for growth inside your business, you set that up for your people, but then you don't give them the tools they need to execute and do their jobs well, right? That's really demoralizing and debilitating for the people in your organization. We talk about the resources, training, technology, and people, time and attention. Your time and attention, of all of the things on that list, that's the most important one. It's the one that we short our people with the most, right? Because we're just busy and we don't have time for them. Sometimes these are just really little things. Sometimes they're not even asking for a lot. But if you're not aware of what it is that your people need, those resources, training, technology, and people, and especially your time and attention, research tells us that there's actually a pretty big emotional hit to employees when they feel like they're not being supported in this way. Okay, so it can be really detrimental, and especially in today's market where we're struggling, right, to find and retain people. Something as simple as that, if you're able to solve this problem for them, will go a long way. So when thinking about, again, the people that report directly to you, are you providing them with the necessary tools to do their job and do it really well? And again, it's only a yes if you can say yes to everyone. Otherwise, it's a no. Oh, I love this next one because I know I struggled with this a lot in my last business. I am letting go of the vine. This delegate and elevate tool is a great tool, and I won't go into it here. Just really understanding it's helping you to work inside your unique ability, right? Working in spaces where these are things that you're great at doing and love to do, or at the very least are good at doing and like to do, versus the opposite of that, things that you don't like to do, but maybe you've gotten pretty good at doing, or that you don't like to do and you're not good at doing. Working in those top two quadrants is fantastic, and finding other people to take on those things underneath, right? So that you're living up here and you're letting people come up and take on the things that they really enjoy doing. There's a story that I tell to my clients when we start this journey about an entrepreneur that falls off a cliff. And he falls out and he grabs a vine, on his way down, and he's like stranded down there about 1,000 feet from the ground, and it's like 1,000 feet up, and he's clutching for dear life. And in a rare moment of religion, he looks up to the heavens and he says, "Is there anybody up there?" He can't even believe it, but a big voice booms down and says, "Do you believe?" Of course, there he is. He's hanging there on the vine. He's like, "Well, sure, I believe." Then let go of the vine. He's looking around. He says, "Is there anybody else up there?" Right? It's just a really scary thing to do, especially when this is your business, or you've been in this position for a long time, and we start letting go of some of our responsibilities. It makes us really nervous. And so we hold on to everything, and then we become a bottleneck in our organization. So if you have created this vision and you've created these openings for your people in your organization, you've given them all the tools and resources that they need, and you need to get out of their way and let them do their work. There's a brilliant book called Drive by Daniel Pink. And in it, he talks about, in fact, I did a whole talk on this years ago. He talks about the three legs of the three things that truly motivate people, right? And it's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That first one we talked about, that clear direction, that provides your people with purpose. This is where you provide autonomy for your people, right? You hired them because they're the right people in the right seat in their job. Now you need to let them do the work and not interfere with that. There's another example of this, and this might sound familiar to some of you. The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. It's a great book by Ken Blanchard. And again, when we're unwilling to let go, our people then are unwilling to take charge. So what happens is they're coming into your office every day, and they've got this obstacle, this problem, this barrier, maybe even it's an idea, and they want to leave it with you. Think about all those obstacles or issues as monkeys, right? And they desperately want to leave that monkey with you in your office and get the heck out of there. And if you keep allowing people to come into your office and drop off their monkeys all day long, guess what you're doing at the end of the day? You're just chasing around a bunch of monkeys in your office, and you're not getting any of your own work done, right? So it's really important that we learn to make sure that people are solving their own issues and problems when they can, and that you're not taking ownership of those. That's part of that letting go of the vine. Let your people grow and thrive. Provide that autonomy. Make sure they have what they need, and then let them go. The one caveat there's those RPRS. Most of you probably don't know what that means because you're not working in an EOS run company, but that's just an acronym that Jim Collins came up with in his book, Good to Great, and it just stands for the right people in the right seat. So if you don't have the right people in the right seat reporting up to you, in other words, if you have somebody in the seat that doesn't get the job, they don't know how to do their job well, what we say, get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it, then you really can't let go of the vine, right? That's when you're going to do some harm to your business as a whole. So we're making the assumption that the people who are reporting up to you are the right people in the right seat. If they're not, that's a whole nother people issue that we need to talk about. But if you've got the right people in the right seat, you've given them the tools, you need to let go and let them thrive and shine in their roles. So again, I'm thinking about those people that I asked you to picture in your mind before we started, those direct reports. Is that a yes for you? If it's an all yes, or is it a no for you? Are you letting go? The fourth, leadership practice. Again, if you just do these things consistently all the time, you're going to be great at this. I act with the greater good in mind. So we've already set what that company vision is. We're repeating ourselves often, right? We're sharing that out with our with our team, hopefully every quarter when we come together and meet and we make sure we're all on the same page, we're sharing that vision out every single quarter. I will tell you, people need to hear something at least 7 times before they hear it the first time. So then, therefore, your actions and your decisions need to be in alignment with that. You need to be walking the talk, putting the company needs first, always acting in the greater good of the organization. A really great litmus test for this is this 10-10-10 rule. You know, think about the decision that you're making. What's the impact going to be 10 minutes from now? What's it going to be 10 months from now? And what's it going to be 10 years from now? If we're acting with the greater good in mind for the organization, that 10-year outcome should be the one that matters most. Okay, that 10 minutes is usually us acting on emotion. Sometimes we're not short-term thinking. If we're looking at 10 months, we want those long-term decisions for the greater good of the organization. So again, in thinking about this, if you've set all this up, are you walking the talk in your organization, when not just with your direct reports, I would hope, but with everyone, but in thinking about in your interactions with the people that report up to you? Do you feel like the decisions you make are always in the greater good? Again, it has to be all yes, or it's a no. Hi, Mondo. It's good to see a face up there.
I was eating lunch. I didn't want to see you guys all.
Yeah, that's all right.
To...
It's just nice to actually see somebody else on the screen with me. All right, welcome. All right, we're wrapping up our leadership here with, am I taking clarity breaks? This one was a hard one for me to take on because I thought, I don't have time for this. And this was one of the biggest game changers when I was still running Orchard Corset years ago, that really helped us even take that next leap in our business. This is your time to work on the business. And you've heard these called a lot of different things. You know, Bill Gates had his think weeks. Most of us can't take a whole week to go be off the grid, but we can certainly take an hour or two, right? It is our time to really create clarity. When you're in your business all the time, you get really narrow in your focus. And sometimes you miss some of those bigger opportunities and ideas. It's protecting your confidence. Doing this will actually make you more confident, help you bring that confidence that you need to your leadership team and your leaders by spending some time thinking and working on your business. It can be daily, weekly, or monthly. Hey, don't get hung up on that. Some people schedule an hour a week. Others will take a whole afternoon off. I used to require everyone on my leadership team to make sure that they had at least 2 of these scheduled a month. You put them on your calendar. You need to schedule it like it's a date with the queen, and don't break that date. Right? We tend to do that to ourselves more than we ever would to anyone else. So you need to really hold these sacred. I have a few. There's sometimes if you're not sure what to do, that's where that blank legal pad. Just go sit down at a coffee shop and get your legal pad and a pencil and just, brain dump if you can't think of anything else to do. I do have a couple of questions I'm just going to read here that sometimes are good conversation starters with your own brain. But I also wrote a blog just a couple of months ago on this exact thing that'll give you a lot more feedback or details, so that in case you're struggling and you can't figure out where to start on this. And I put that in the chat box. So there's a link to that blog. So you're welcome to grab that. But some of the things you could be asking yourself: how strong is my bench? If I lose a key player, do I have someone ready to fill the seat? What is the one people move that I must make this quarter? What seems overly complicated that must be simplified? Am I leveraging the strengths of my organization? What's my top priority this week or this month? What can we do to be more proactive versus being reactive? So there's just a plethora of questions depending on where you're at and what phase you are in your business. It can just be one big hairy thing that's been kind of giving you a little bit of a heartache over the last few months that maybe you just need to sit down and just really get some clarity on. I can't recommend these enough. I continue to do these to this day. They're hugely powerful, whether it's your business or even sometimes in your personal life. We all need a little clarity break. Someplace out of your office. What a clarity break is not is sitting at your desk on your computer, looking at your email. Okay. If at all possible, I encourage you to be completely disconnected, even if you're just going for a walk. Right. And just kind of being alone with your thoughts. It's your think time. This is the 7th habit for those of you that are Stephen Covey fans, right? This is the habit of sharpening the saw. Hi, Maria, right? It's thinking about our thinking and helping us to be better at what we do. So are you taking clarity breaks? Yes or no? Now, these ones were kind of bigger because leadership is that way, right? A little bit more nebulous. When we flip over now to the management piece of this, things are a little bit more just like when we talked about the beginning, a little bit more doing and execution in the weeds of your business a little bit. So let's take a look at the 5 management practices. Again, thinking about your direct reports, you might want to write that number back on the top of this page as well. And speaking of Stephen Covey, I'm going to start this with one of his quotes. He says, effective leadership is putting first things first, right? Figuring out what our priorities are. Effective management is discipline and carrying it out. And it really does, again, boil down to these 5 practices. And if you can do these 5 things really well, accountability is your byproduct. You cannot hold people accountable. You have to create an environment where accountable people thrive. The moment you think you need to manage someone, according to Jim Collins, you've made a hiring mistake. We just want to create the environment where the people that are the right people in the right seat are going to thrive in that accountability. So let's take a look and let's dive into our 5 management practices. And depending on where you are in your organization, sometimes this needs to be stronger for you than your leadership piece does. I find the higher up on that org chart, on the accountability chart, the stronger the leadership component needs to be. And as you move into more middle management pieces, a lot of times these management practices become a lot more useful to you. But I truly believe that you need to have some of both. You really want to make sure that you're growing both your leadership and your management, and you're doing that the same for the people that report up to you. All right, number 1. Oh, one of my other favorite quotes leading into this is management is not what you do to people, it's what you provide for them, right? It's just another way to say what I said. We're creating an environment. You don't manage people, it's something that you provide for them. So that first practice there, I keep expectations clear. Again, there is no such thing as over communication. What might be obvious to us, I have learned the hard way, unfortunately, one too many times, is not obvious to everyone else. Okay, and there it says mine and theirs. So this is a two-way street. So first of all, they need to know what your expectations of them are. And I have these roles, core values, and KPIs, and companies that I work with, roles are defined on the accountability chart, right? We have defined, if you're sitting in this seat, these are at a high level, the 4 or 5 or 6 things that you are accountable for doing and doing really well in this organization. Core values are a handful of rules. So if you're an organization that has core values, hopefully you're using them to hire, fire, recognize, reward, review your people. If not, they're not very meaningful to have in an organization. So I would encourage you, that's a whole nother, again, topic of conversation, but that's a handful of rules in any organization. Right? Are they living into your core values? That's an expectation. What kind of KPI or measurable does their job require? What's a number, right? For lack of a better, to simplify it, are they accountable, 1 or 2 or 3, for keeping on track every week, every month, every quarter, whatever that looks like for them? We also have these things called rocks in our organization and companies that I work with, which are just 90-day business priorities. But even if you don't have that, there should still be some kind of clarity around what are your priorities? What are we expecting out of you? That should cover probably about 90% of your expectations of them. If you've done a good job creating that opening, that's kind of their roles. They understand your core values, that's part of your vision, and they've got a measurable. And then whatever other smaller things that might be related to the job that they're in and the business that you're in or the industries they're in, make sure that you really communicate clearly over and over and over again what your expectations of them are. And just as importantly, you need to understand what are their expectations of you. And you're not going to know that if you don't ask. Sometimes this is where you might even find out some of those resources perhaps that they're missing, right? What do you expect of me? What do you need from me? Remember, you are there to serve them, not the other way around. What do you need from me? What are your expectations of me as your supervisor or boss? So in thinking about your direct reports, once again, thinking about all of them, is it a yes because you can say yes to all of them, or is it a no? Number 2, oh, this is such a big one. I am communicating well. Again, two-way street, me and them. That second bullet there, you know what's on each other's mind, no assumptions. I bet we can all think of a time in our lives, both professionally and personally, where we've seen somebody, either cross their arms or yawn or roll their eyes, and we immediately start telling a story in our head about what's going on there. And probably 95% of the time, we're completely wrong. And then it starts to spiral, right? And we get all angry. And that's sometimes where so many things blow up for no reason, because we just didn't ask. Hey, Bella, what was that look I saw in the meeting? Oh, I was thinking about this other thing over here. You got to ask. Hey, that's what we mean by no assumptions. If you see something or you sense something, it's like at the airport. If you see something, say something, right? So if you see something, I want you to make sure that you engage with that person. Find out. Almost always it's going to be something not what you thought it was. And sometimes to engage in those tough conversations. So the rest of this, there's a couple of things on here, and I'll share a few more. I'll share a resource where you can go to more. The other things on here are just ways to help you sometimes engage in some of those conversations if they feel a little bit uncomfortable for you, or you're not sure how to enter that danger. The two emotions, again, as an example, perhaps you think somebody was unimpressed or is not on board with, I don't know, some project that you're moving forward with, or a presentation that you saw. And so you could just ask them, and Maria, I'm going to pick on you because I can see you sitting right in front of me. So Maria, I noticed your reaction in that meeting that we had today. How about if we each share two emotions? You tell me the most positive and the most negative thing that came out of that for you, and then I'll share mine. Okay, just a little bit of an icebreaker, a way to get people talking. Make sure that you also are asking clarifying questions. Hey, this is what I heard you say. Because again, we go back to assumptions. And if you're not sure that somebody heard you correctly, you can reverse that. Tell me what you heard me say. I cannot over communicate enough. There's no such thing as over communication. And you will save so much heartache and headache if you can just spend a little bit of time in this up front. I was really horrible at this because I don't like to repeat. I always felt it was condescending. So I did a very poor job at this, to some detriment to all of us when I was running my company. I had to learn the hard way. Question to statement ratio. If you're that kind of boss that's just used to telling your people everything, stop. Get better at asking questions. You should be doing about 20% of the talking. You will get gold if you can just learn to let them talk. Say a few phrases like, "Oh, tell me more about that." And what else? And you just keep asking. You'll learn so much more than if you keep telling. And that's a struggle. I have to write myself a note to do that, even when I do my client check-ins. I'm like, Cheri, don't ask, just ask questions. Quit telling them what to do. So, we find our tools, right? It's hard to undo 50 years of bad behavior. The other piece, there's a great story when I teach vision, but I think it fits in here pretty well about communicating well. There was a study done, I can't even remember when, not that long ago, but I read about it in a Heath Brothers book. And they had listeners and thumpers. Maybe some of you have heard this. And they did 120 listeners come in and listen to these people that had a pencil and tapped out really common songs like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Happy Birthday, Row, Row, Row Your Boat. And the people that were doing the thumping figured that at least 50% of the people were going to guess what they were thumping. Only 3 out of 120, 2.5%. Because they can hear all the melody and all you're hearing is this tap, tap. So that's how communication often works. We have the whole story in our head and we're not taking the time to make sure that people are hearing us clearly. And so again, what seems so clear to us, so obvious, well, doesn't everybody know that this is, well, no, they just hear a bunch of tapping. So you have to help with this by making sure that we're asking clarifying questions, that we're all on the same page, and that we truly understand what one another is saying. That's what we mean when we talk about communicating really well. Take a few extra minutes, it will save you hours and probably dollars later if you do this in advance. I know I spent a lot of time on this one, but I'm super passionate about it because I sucked at it so bad. So I'm just trying to help you all out. So again, yes or no? If you do this well with all of your direct reports, it's a yes. If not, I need you to check the no box. I have the right meeting pulse. So this is just making sure that we keep the circles connected. This kind of comes back to both autonomy, purpose, all of those things with your employees. What we don't want to do is have people operating in silos, because that's just a train wreck waiting to happen in your organization. What you also don't want to do is be on top of each other, right? We call that micromanaging and just smothering each other in your organization. We want to make sure that we're keeping the circles connected just enough so the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, but we've got time and space to do our jobs. We recommend a weekly meeting pulse, and we have this really awesome meeting called a level 10 meeting agenda that I don't have time to go into now. But in essence, it just means that every week, each leadership team, however many teams that are on your business, gets together and they have this incredible meeting to make sure that we all know what's happening in the organization, that we're solving the issues that need to get solved this week, okay, and that we're getting them done. It's structured to do that really well. That even exchange of dialogue means that if you're the one running your weekly meetings, let's make sure that everybody is contributing. We tend to have some natural verbose people in an organization and some natural kind of shy and quiet people. So it's your job as the leader of that team to make sure that everybody's getting an opportunity to be heard. And then I have that chestnut checker pieces. So when I talk about that weekly team meeting is generally enough for most people, it isn't for everyone. You're going to have some people that actually need a weekly one-on-one with you, especially if they're newer, or maybe they're looking to grow or be promoted inside the organization. Whatever that reason might be, what I would discourage you to do, and I've done this with a lot of my clients, is don't just have a weekly meeting just to have a weekly meeting. If it's about you wanting to have a weekly meeting, because that's just about you wanting to keep your thumb on top of that person. That's about micromanaging and control. If they need that extra time from you, then give it to them. You cannot treat your people like checker pieces. They don't all move the same. You have an entire organization full of chess pieces and they all move a little bit differently. So you as a leader need to figure out what's best for them, not what's best for you. So that's what I mean by, do you have the right meeting pulse? So again, can you check that a yes? Is it a yes for all of your direct reports, or is it a no? This next one was one of my very favorite things when I discovered this as something for us to do in our organization. I am having quarterly conversations. This will improve your trust and relationships with your employees, probably more than any other single thing that you can do. It's in addition to having a formal annual review. So the other 3 quarters that you're not having that annual review, you should have this quarterly conversation. It should be offsite. It is informal. It's not going in anyone's record. Kind of helps with minor course corrections. So in what we do, this EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, we kind of live in this 90-day world because we know and understand that people tend to fray about every 90 days. Think about anything you've ever done, any exercise program or diet or anything. You know, we're really gung-ho for a while and we just kind of veer off course a little bit. So every 90 days, when I work with my teams, we come back together. We make sure that we're all on the same page. We saw how we did last quarter. We set up our priorities again for the next quarter. We course correct if we need to. Well, your employees are going to need some of that also. This is a way to help us do some minor course corrections along the way. There should be no real surprises in this meeting, and that'll make more sense when we get to the 5th practice. But it's a great time. Usually you're going to be looking in. For us, it's like, well, how are you sitting in your seat? Are you performing your roles well? How are you living out our core values? How are you hitting your measurables or your numbers every week? Really, it's about what's working and what's not working in its simplest terms. And I think anything should be fair game. When I did these, I had them start, all right, what do you see as working? Make sure that we hit on these important things as far as their roles, responsibilities, numbers, but then anything was allowed. And then what do you think is not working? I learned so much. And then I would follow suit. Well, here's what I see working and here's what I see not working. As you do this more and more, several years in, these conversations get so much deeper and they really turn into these career conversations and you really understand. And they know where it's coming from. So you have all this trust. You filled up your trust bucket with this employee, and it allows you to have some of those sometimes really difficult conversations because they know where it's coming from. Again, this is one of those, I don't have time for this. You don't have time not to do this. It's so, so valuable. I have teams that just sometimes they'll just take a walk with their direct report. Others will go and grab coffee. At higher levels, I have people go on grab wine or beer. You get a lot of information that way. So in thinking about your direct reports, are you having quarterly conversations? Yes or no? And then finally, I am rewarding and recognizing, and this is where I said nothing should be a surprise. Okay, you're giving positive and negative feedback quickly within 24 hours. I always like to liken this with my teams is you can't go rub that poor puppy's nose in the pee 3 days later. He's not going to know what you're doing. They're not going to remember even the event. So you need to get on top of that pretty quickly. Criticize in private and praise in public is the general rule, but I will tell you once in a while we go back to chess pieces and not checker pieces. You have some people that are really uncomfortable with public praise. If you have somebody that works for you on your team that embarrasses them too much, don't do it. Again, it's not about you, it's about them. Okay? Be their boss, not their buddy. This can get pretty sticky if you blur that line too much in your organization. And this last one, the 3-strike rule, I actually wrote a whole article on this too that I'm happy to send out, but I'll give you the high-level version of this. So we have this great tool called the People Analyzer, and what we do, so it crystallizes and makes it really clear who the right people are in the right seat in your organization. So whatever mechanism you have for determining whether or not somebody is doing their job well or living, doing the core values the way you want them done in your organization well, a strike one meeting is when clearly that's not being done. And you need to have multiple examples. I tell my clients at least 3 specific examples in each area where you see this not happening, where they're falling short. Because it's really easy to, oh, well, that was that one time. That was just an off, or yeah, and then that other time. It's really hard to dispute 3 data points. And you really bring them together and this is a formal on the record conversation, but kind of like a performance review improvement plan even. Here's what success looks like for you. This is what, and if you've done all these other things really well, they should know that because you've really communicated what it looks like, what the seat looks like, what your expectations are. So when you have this strike one meeting, this is where we're falling below expectation. This is where we need you. Here's where you are. What can I do to help? I always invite them to be part of the solution. What makes the strike one powerful is that in the strike one, you're setting the strike two. 30 days from now, here's where I need you to be, if that's reasonable, depending on what the situation is. It is for most. And no matter what, you come back together for that strike two conversation. Hey, if they've come up there, awesome. Pat on the back, job well done. Let me know what I can do to help you keep moving forward. This is fantastic. If they're not, it's time for strike two. And you need a whole new set of data points, because if they're not there, this is why in the last 30 days, we're still not here. And strike three is exactly what it sounds like, and you bring in HR. I will tell you that of my 26 or 7 clients now, nobody's ever had to have a strike three. People will self-select out. When it becomes really clear that they can't actually meet your expectations in an organization, you've kind of shined a big old spotlight, they'll leave. And the small percentage of people that don't just really weren't aware of what success really looked like. There was too much ambiguity around what it was they needed to be doing in their job, and they will rise up. Those success stories are awesome because sometimes it becomes some of your best people. I have a personal one from my last business where that happened. So if you do all of these things well, again, I want you, is this a yes or a no? Thinking about all of the people that report up to you. Can you give yourself a check mark that's a yes? Or is it a no? And I didn't think to link that article, Bella, but I can, to dive into the 3-strike rule a little bit more. For those of you that really want more, because this was a high level, there's this great book that basically has all this in there, How to Be a Great Boss. Kind of walk you through this in a lot more detail than I just walked you through it in, and provide some more rich examples for you to dive into. We've got about 20 minutes for Q&A if anybody's got it. So quiet. See, when I do this in person, people always have questions. I think it's scarier on Zoom to ask when you're not sitting around a table. Otherwise, I'm going to give you 20 minutes of your day back. We're always told to leave time for questions, but
I had a question, but I
Yes.
think you may have already answered it. I think on, let me see here. So under the 5 management practices, the second one, you kind of already gave an example of it, but like, for example, if we're having them ask questions, what was the one statement you said, like, oh gosh, I forgot what that was.
Tell me more about that.
Yes, there we go. So like, what kind of
Tell me
questions?
more. Those 3 little words are fantastic. And what else? Those are 3 magic words also.
Mhm.
But then we have to let silence do the heavy lifting. So you have to learn to be comfortable with a little uncomfortable silence. Because when you let silence do the heavy lifting after you ask that question, you just got to wait. They're waiting for you to fill in the blanks. The longer you can sit back, and then and here's what my plea to you is that you are genuinely curious. Because if they think you're just paying lip service, this isn't going to go well for you. And if some of the problems that they're having, this is something I've warned people about when you're doing a quarterly conversation. If you ask what's working and not working, and somebody with the not working, and they say, well, quite frankly, it's you. I had somebody ask me that in a workshop once. I'm like, well, you're probably expecting it. So school yourself before you get there. Because the moment you try to deflect or defend, you've dumped over that trust bucket and forget ever getting that thing filled up again. You've lost a huge opportunity. So be prepared to check your ego. And if somebody says that to you, your response should be, tell me more about that.
Perfect.
And you just listen and you just take it.
That makes sense. I think I checked no on everything because there's always room for improvement.
Right.
Like, regardless of how well I think I do any of these or how well I have followed this, there's always room for improvement.
There's always room, and I like to challenge people to figure out when you can get to all yeses. So when I work with my teams, I'm like, so how many quarters is it going to take for us to get to 10 yeses? And my definition of that is when you hand this to your direct reports and you explain it to them, they say it's a yes.
When I've retired after the age of, no, I'm just kidding.
It's a fun challenge.
Yeah. Another thing that you kind of had, and I'm sorry, everybody, if I'm like taking over the question
I'm happy
segment
you're
here.
asking questions. You're probably asking questions they have.
Hopefully, we'll see. But another thing is like the expectation component. Like, obviously, we've got clear expectations for our staff here, but like, I've never thought about what are their expectations of us. So like, how do you dive deeper into those conversations or have those conversations, and like what would be a good kind of segue into that or introduction to that?
I feel like in a quarterly conversation would be a great time to bring that up. After you have kind of repeated, hey, here's what and make sure that those expectations, especially their roles and things like that, we want to make sure those are written down, and we don't just want them floating around up in up in cyberspace. Make sure that people can really read those and make sure that we're all clear and on the same page. And then you just ask them. So are you clear on what my expectations of you are? I want to make sure. So what I'd love to know is, what are your expectations of me? What is it that you need from me as a leader? Just ask. And if they say, I don't know, this is a Susan Scott thing that I love. And I look for the opportunity. If somebody says, I don't know, you just say, so tell me what it would be if you did know. You will always get an answer. People always know, they're just afraid to say.
Any additional questions or comments?
And if you're afraid to ask them here, just reach out to the chamber and they'll put you in touch with me and you can ask me offline.
Maybe everybody else checked off yes on everything.
Well, if I could see everyone, I'd actually make you give me thumbs up and thumbs down. That would be good to know, but I've never had that happen.
Just kidding, everybody.
It looks like there's a question in the chat. Where do we get the book?
How about if I will send you the link, or maybe I can pull it up right now and throw it in the chat. You can just get it on
If
Amazon.
you want to send me the link, I can add that to the emails that I. will
Oh, when
send
you,
everybody else.
perfect. So I'll make sure that she has a link to that and you can grab it.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and close. So thank you, Cheri, so much.
Thank you so
for
much.
doing this.
15 minutes back of your lunch. You're welcome.
And thank you, everybody, for attending. And I will send
Janice.
out an email to everybody here and get that information from Cheri included in the email, and also her contact information if you have any other questions or concerns. And just hopefully everyone will look out for next month's What's for Lunch as well.
Yeah, what is it? Why don't we put a plug for that? What do we got next month?
Enrollment for group health.
Oh, yes. Oh, all right. That'll be a good one. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margo. And Mary and Michael and Janice.